Did somebody say time leap? Because we are back! Stand up! Vanguard! Time leap isn't the only one that's back in this video, because I'm also finally back, because this video is 1 week late. And it's not the only thing that's late on this channel, but a lot have happened with work and whatnot. But we're back, and with a big one, because last week we got a huge information dump. Although it's only one specific thing, it has major implications for the upcoming Chronojet product, as well as for potentially premium implications. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's first dive into this new update to the Chronojet product. Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to another Cardfight update, and today we have a you could say an outdated one, but it's very important to talk about this nonetheless, because this literally, the reveal of this skyrocketed my excitement for this product from, I was already like 10 out of 10, but now I'm like 1,000 out of 10. It's like, this thing is a game changer. So what am I actually talking about? Well, we knew that we would get 9 extra cards, and we knew that 8 of those were G-Zone strides. And we were speculating on what this extra card would be. Some would think it would be a G-Guard, Uluru or something. But as I was hinting towards, it would be pretty unlikely, as it makes the product a bit of an iffy thing, unless they make the Uluru thing like a hard once per deck thing. But then they would probably already tell us about it, because they really told us about 8 G-Zone cards. Now, what it is what some people are speculating about, a specific token card that would represent your G's and whatnot. Well, that's somewhat the case, but it's much more, because what they revealed to us to be the 9th extra card is a brand new mechanic card, which is called a CREST. And for Chronojet, we have this CREST. And there's a lot of text on this thing, and all those things are actual impactful abilities that impact standard and potentially premium. But let's go over these effects one by one, and then first talk about the standard implications, and then go over to the fun side that is premium. The first effect this CREST has is continuous. You can stride and cannot write any grade for your greater card with Chronojet in its card name. So this is essentially what they were hinting towards, that the stride mechanic was only towards Chronojet. Now this confirms that restriction, but more importantly, it's a more harsher restriction in the fact that if you even want to stride, you need this CREST, and when you have this CREST, you can no longer write any other grade for your grade 4 that doesn't have the Chronojet name. So in standard, that means no grade 4 Bruce shenanigans, and that's a pretty important implication. Premium, again, we're going to talk about that in a moment. Now, the second thing is continuous. The original power of your grade 3 card with Chronojet in their card name becomes 13k, including hard cards. So this is also very important, because we already knew we would have Chronojet getting an extra 2k via some effect. Now, we knew about how the stride mechanic works, so even though we would have the 13k base, the moment we stride, then we only look at the hard card power, which is 11, so we would make a bit of awkward numbers, but knowing the power of strides, we could take it for granted. But with this, now means that also the 13k stays while being in a stride form, so the strides will be 28k. If strides have 15k base, we don't know of yet. This is just pure speculation. So we will have like 28k base attacks. So that's already a pretty good number out of nowhere. So that's also important in detail here. Now, the third effect is continuous. During your turn, if you have a grade for your greater Vanguard with Chronojet in its card name, all of your front row units get power plus 5k for each face-up card in your D-Zone. Okay, this is a game changer. Now, we know Chronojet won't have Persona Ride, so this can to some extent compensate for the fact of the lack of Persona Ride. Because if we stride, we probably will have a flip stride, so at the end of the first stride turn, we will have 2 cards face up in G-Zone, so the subsequent turn, we will have plus 10k. So on turn 4, plus 10k to the front row, which honestly is pretty decent. The important thing is to notice that it counts specifically only face up cards in the G-Zone, so if if we stride a card that doesn't flip anything, we do not get any power buff that turn. We need to flip something to get additional power. So this, in the first turn, maybe the second grade 3 turn, this is similar to Persona Riding. It's not anything ridiculous. It will change the moment we go into a second turn with next stage, because not only next stage flips something, it moves itself back to the G zone. So on that second turn, you most likely will have plus 20k to the front row. And those are suddenly actually pretty beefy numbers, because that's actually a double Persona Ride turn. Minus the draw, of course. But the numbers don't lie. Now, I see a lot of people losing their mind over this, but keep in mind, we do not know any other effect of any other unit. So if no other skill really pumps power to the columns, we are really in need of this skill to actually make threatening numbers, because a lot of other decks can easily hit 30, 40, 50k numbers on the Vanguard and Rearguards. Think of Nirvana, think of Zorga, think even of Gravidia and whatnot. They can easily hit decent numbers within the 33k range, and we need this in order to attain this as well. Of course, we have a Vanguard swing and we have a guard restrict on the Vanguard, but that is turn 4 most likely, because I don't really see next stage being a first tried option, and with G-guards not being a thing, we cannot even G-guard and then when we go second, immediately go to the next hit on the second turn. That's not an option for us right now. It's probably going to be very slow, unless they're going to power buff next stage, which I won't mind, but it's a thing to consider right now with the current card design. So yes, this will scale insanely into the late game, but let's be honest, once we get into like the 3rd grade 3 turn or the 4th grade 3 turn, games should most likely end at that point. And most games do, because not a lot of decks can survive until that point, with those big numbers being thrown and with most decks already being able to achieve 4 to 5 attacks. So I don't think this is going to be all too ridiculous in standard right now, but this might change once we get like G-guards in the future or some other type of effects that can like turbo flip cards into our G-zone face up. That is definitely a possibility. Maybe some of the main deck cards or the right line does that. We don't know. Like, that would actually be interesting if the right line deck effects allows us to maybe flip cards in our G-zone face up to accelerate our GB abilities. That would actually be pretty spicy. But that aside, we also have an additional effect, which is where things really get interesting. Because the final effect of this crest is auto. At the beginning of your battle phase, choose one of your grade 3 or greater rearguards and increase or decrease its grade to 0. Yes, we are great manipulating our cards right now in standard. And that most likely will mean one specific thing. Time leap. And I don't want to fire this gun just yet, because yes, this will definitely hint towards time leap to some extent, but I want to make something very clear and bring your attention to something. One of the G-Zone cards, being Fate Rider, can also hint towards this effect, because the original Fate Rider was a pseudo time leap effect that interact with grades of cards. So in this case, this could maybe hint towards Fate Rider as an interaction and not necessarily time leap. And being able to turn our grade 3s into grade 0 so we can get grade 1s on the board can also be very useful, because we know we have Chronojet cards in the main deck which are dead copies, as there's no Persona Riding. So that could maybe turn our Chronojets into something more useful. But as we don't know any effects and whatnot, we might see a time leap engine to some sort, but that's just wishful thinking and pure speculation. I think this is mainly towards either Fate Rider or to some premium implication. Now, before we go into the premium thing, there's one thing we need to address that's very important to the premium aspect of this whole card, and that's how do we acquire this? There are two potential ways that we acquire this, and this is pure speculation because they haven't confirmed anything about how we get this CREST card into play in the first instance. One, it could be a ride line effect. If it's a ride line effect, it is very unlikely this is going to be a game changer in premium. It could be, but it's going to be very hard and it's going to be super expensive, because keep in mind, if it's like a grade 1 ride line effect, we need 4 copies of that grade 1. And with only 1 copy of that grade 1 in the deck, which is already like $55 or like 40, 50 euros, it's going to be expensive to get a playset of that grade 1. Or a grade 2. Depends on what it is going to be. So I hope that's not the case. but it's a possibility. For standard, this is no game changing whatsoever because the ride line exists. It's just for premium an issue. The other thing they could go is the monster box route. And the monster box route, or monster strike should I say, is that they had the mechanic that's called monster box, which is somewhat similar to this CREST in the likes that it is an additional card that has effects that's activated outside of the game and that interacts with your gameplay. And how you acquire that monster box is just to stand up your Vanguard. And it was on the grade 0 that additionally when you ride that grade 0 at the start of the game, you acquire the monster box. And that could be the same case with Chronojet acquiring you this crest the moment you start the game and flip Chronojet as your first starting Vanguard. If that's the case, that could be very important and a major impact, not only in standard, but also in premium. And you might think to yourself, well, that's way too busted because you get this insane effect that then allows your entire engine to go live on turn 0, essentially. An important thing is, what they could do to balance this out, and they did this with Monster Strike, the starter does not allow you to draw a card if you go second. So you get this whole mechanic, and you get these extra cards and whatnot, but you do not get the early turns draws. Which could be an impact, especially in premium, because in premium, draw starters are the name of the game. Like, they increase the consistency of any deck quite significantly, especially early on. And sacrificing a draw to potentially have something like this, that then most part doesn't really do anything, because the striding effect doesn't do anything in premium, because you can already stride. It limits your game plan even more, because you're locked in Chronojet cards. The 13k base is nice, but we already have a 13k base Chronojet with Chronojet V. So that's also a thing, and Chronojet V doesn't work with this crest, so that's also an important thing to keep in mind. And the extra power with the G-Zone is very late game, whereas in Premium, it's a very early OTK fest, so you don't have time to ramp up the power as much that you wish for. So that's also important things to keep in mind. So I hope it's going to be a Chronojet effect, where you just get this crest, thus opening up the room for your grade 1 and grade 2 of the ride line to do something more unique, like maybe potentially flipping G-Card face up in your G-Zone, which could be pretty spicy, but that's just speculation. Now, moving on to the premium side of things. This is where things really get very spicy. So, first off, I already explained, the initial effect that you can stride doesn't really do anything in premium, but the issue is we are locked in Chronojet cards. So, if we use this crest, we can only use Chronojet Dragon, Chronojet Dragon G, and Chronojet Dragon Z. Now, I will immediately tell you, if you're going to use this crest, you can write off Chronojet Dragon. Why would you use Chronojet Dragon if you could literally use Chronojet Dragon G, which is infinitely better than Chronojet Dragon? The rewind thing for counterblast is not useful in premium as much as just more power stacking, as well as the Stride TimeLeap effect, which is honestly really good. But more importantly, Chronojet Dragon Z as a ZTB can change a lot, because I know a lot of ZTB fans out there were screaming for power buffs to all their numbers so they can actually be relevant. Now, this isn't a defensive power buff, so your triggers aren't really that more powerful in defensive-wise, or the triggers are not 10k, but being able to pump your columns with 5, 10, 15, 20k, 25k, 30k is not nothing. So that could be a pretty spicy thing. But there's another thing that's way more impactful in my opponent's opinion, but we get to that a bit later, because that's something I've been wishing for the longest of time, and now we finally got it. But before we get to that, the 13k base is a nice addition. Now, as I already stated, it doesn't really mean anything, because we already have Chronojet Dragon V, aka the V version of Chronojet Dragon, but Chronojet Dragon V doesn't really do anything with this crest, because we are not able to write anything that isn't Chronojet anymore. So the pseudo-write effect of Chronojet V is out of the window. So in order to use this crest, we sacrifice the early aggression plays of Chronojet Dragon V that allows us to not only stack force markers early on, but also do like a time leaper play or a Chronos command play while our opponent is still at grade 2. That's not an option. Or Mystery Flare Dragon. That's also gone. Mystery Flare Dragon Turbo is not available with this crest play. Again, they need to ban Mystery Flare Dragon, because there's no way in hell that it is going to be out competing Mystery Flare Dragon Turbo. That's not gonna happen. But then we get to the more interesting part, and that's the latter two effects. And that's where we get into the thing where I've been the most excited about with this particular card. The power stacking and the time leap interaction with turning a grade 3 into a grade 0. Because turning a grade 3 into a grade 0 at the start of your battle phase basically means any grade 3 is a TikTok worker. That basically sets up all your time leap combos, which is really, really good. Or it could be an Uratar that can turn into a Melon! And one thing I've been screaming for the most is a new retrain of Melon. No, not that garbage. An actual retrain of Melon, which is just the same as G-Melon, which just increased stats. So it can poke 13k base Vanguards. This crest does that and much more. Like, I was just asking for a Melon that can hit for 13k or 23k on the force marker, which then would interact with Chronojet V. Now, this crest could make Melon 16k, 21k, 26k, 31k, 36k, 41k, and turn everything into massive beaters as well. That together with potentially Time Leaper Dragon, or that together with potentially History Build Dragon with also extra power and a multi-attack, whatnot, could make things really interesting. And you might wonder, how do you get a Melon to 31 to 41k? Well, that's where Gear Groovy comes into play, because Gear Groovy can accelerate your G-Zone into the stratosphere. Because if you can able to stride in Gear Groovy, not only will he flip himself, he will flip another card, which is most likely in the next stage, which then flips another copy of himself. And if you copy another Gear Dragon that also can flip something, that could potentially flip yet another card. So that could be like 4, 5, 6 GBs suddenly being increased while you're multi-attacking, while you're multi-attacking with your Vanguard, and then suddenly you have plus 15k extra on top of what you already have to the front row. That are like Melons, History Makers, Upstream, TikToks, and whatnot, which just go crazy on your opponent's face. Defensive triggers will not matter anymore at this point, and the only thing that can save them are over triggers, which hopefully are also something in the past, in the future of Premium. But that's going way too fast into the future. So as you can see, this could definitely be like the renaissance of Premium Time Leap, and potentially Premium ZTB, depending on how players are going to manipulate this, which is honestly really, really exciting. Because if we finally are putting the nail in the coffin of Mystery Flare Turbo, we could look at potentially 3 very interesting Gear Chronicle Premium decks. That's Steam Maidens, that's Chronojet Time Leap again, and potentially ZTB. And I think ZTB is probably the most questionable one here, because I don't know how much impact this Power Puff is going to do, but it could make a difference, especially with Chronovisor Heritage. Steam Maidens is something that still needs to be worked out, but Time Leap, it's essentially just Time Leap again, but just with bigger numbers. And honestly, that just works. And the only thing to make it work is just to make this format a bit slower. And let's be honest, that's what we all hope the next battle is going to do. But besides that, overall, this crest mechanic has stirred my excitement from here all the way over there for not only standard, but also for premium with this deck. Because there's a lot of implications and a lot of excitement about this, and potentially even more potential for the future, because the more support this deck is going to get with more strides and more stuff, this thing can spiral even further out of control, which has me very, very excited. And watching everybody lose their mind in the past week about this mechanic and seeing the fear in their eyes about what this could do has me very, very excited. But with that said, that's basically all I have today with this new update for the crest mechanic for Chronojet. I'm very curious of what you guys think about this new mechanic, so let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Also, before I go, one thing that we also learned is that from the normal deck version is that every card is going to have a triple R version, and the rest is going to come in, and all our G-Zone cards, one copy is going to be an SP, which is nice. But the premium version is going to be full triple R for the main deck and full SP for the entire G-Zone. So now, the 200 or basically the 220k yen price tag is honestly worth it. I was very skeptical at first, but now that we know that, yes, I'm definitely going to get that if we're going to English version. And we also saw today the Crest SP, and oh my god, does it look gorgeous. I hope we're gonna get the English version of it, because definitely I'm gonna spend my money and throw it in Bushwood's face. Because I want all those SPs and all those high rarity stuff, because it looks mighty spicy. But that's basically everything I have today. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And I want to give a huge shout out to my Patreon supporters over at patreon.com/insider. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply go to patreon.com/insider and become a patron today. But with that said, I've been Mr. Time Leap, and I see you guys in the next one!